again everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to be taking a look at FSiPanel. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the Advanced Edition available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. FSiPanel is a tool which allows you to quickly and easily establish various training scenarios within the sim, enabling you to more closely mimic real-world airline training. It is important to note that unlike most of my content, this is actually a paid demonstration of the product, and as such, of course, it's not going to be a review per se, but with that being said, I'll aim to give you a comprehensive and accurate overview of the program. As ever, I wouldn't be promoting the product here on the channel if I hadn't tried it myself, and I didn't believe it offered genuine value to you, the user. During this video, we'll first take a look at FSiPanel's main user interface and the various options available there. We'll then work our way through a couple of training scenarios, and finally we'll finish up covering a few more specifics regarding the product. Hopefully you'll find the video of interest, and for the Airbus fans amongst you, you should enjoy the video. We're going to be jumping back into the superb Fenix Airbus A320 for our flights today, and running through a couple of failure scenarios along the way. As always, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. To begin then, let's start by taking a look at the FSiPanel instructor station. So once we load into FSiPanel, you can see we get a fairly basic but certainly very functional UI. With the aircraft starting on the ground, FSiPanel automatically populates the fields for both our departure airfield, so Lima Sierra Golf Golf, we're departing out of Geneva off runway 04. And you can see here we're going to be in the Fenix Airbus A320 for our scenario. In terms of position, we can obviously select various positions to start our approach. We're going to be going for a long final for the first portion of the video. We'll come back to that later on though. In terms of the sim controls, here we can select a few options in terms of the simulation rate, as well as setting our altitude, heading and speed. In terms of failures, you can see we have a comprehensive selection of failures available. It is worth noting though, these particular failure scenarios are only available on a certain select few number of aircraft. I believe that's the Leonardo Mad Dog, Fenix Airbus A320, and the PMDG 737. As far as the training scenarios go, again they are aircraft specific. You can see here, for example, we have a short hop around the Caribbean, training flight around Frankfurt. Later on we're going to be flying a very short hop from Bremen over towards Hanover. In terms of options, here we can select the distances that we want for our various approach positions. So here, for example, on final, for a short final it's 4 nautical miles, long final is 8 nautical miles. We have the same there for downwind, base and vectors. You can also select the various units that the program uses. So for visibility between meters and statute miles, weight between kilograms and pounds. The program also shows your current navigation database cycle. As well, you can select the push button that you want to use to have the virtual first officer run through the aft landing checks once you have the aircraft on the ground. On the landing reports tab, nothing to show there at the moment, but after each landing, FSiPanel will actually print out a landing report. We'll take a look at that once we have the Fenix A320 back on the ground. Again, FSiPanel does offer some custom support for a selection of add-ons, including the Leonardo Mad Dog, the PMDG 737, the fly-by-wire and the Fenix Airbus A320. On the others page, there is some basic support as well for the Aerosoft CRJ and the Inibil's A310. Here we can select the default auto brake option, for example, on the A310. FSiPanel will automatically configure the aircraft for your chosen approach or scenario. And lastly, in terms of the training scenarios, on the scenarios page we can download additional training scenarios. It is worth noting, again, these are aircraft specific. Also, the scenarios do vary in terms of fidelity. Some, for example, using voice commands for the air traffic control, others just using basic text. So that's a brief overview of the setup options. Again, we're initially going to fly the aircraft from a long final through to touchdown. So back onto the position page, we'll select long final. At this point, all we need to do is click the Move Aircraft tab. However, just for the sake of interest, I'm going to set up a failure scenario here as well. I'll keep that as a surprise for you guys, so we'll come back once we're in the cockpit of the A320 and ready to fly our approach. Okay, so as you can see, we have now loaded into the Fenix Airbus A320, and FSiPanel just running through the initial setup here for the approach. First thing it wants us to do is just reset the thrust levers into the climb detent. And we now have the thrust lever set to climb. FSiPanel is now going to reposition the aircraft for our 8-mile final. It's also going to entirely configure the Airbus here for the approach, which is a rather nice touch. So you can see we've already got the correct flight plan here, the ILS for runway 04 at Geneva. And automatically here the MCDU being set up for the approach, so just currently populating the init A page. During the setup process you will see the aircraft reposition multiple times. You might see some strange behaviours as well from the aircraft and its systems as a result. And the process can take a little bit of time, roughly anywhere from around 60 seconds up to about 2 minutes I tend to find. So we're just going to let the reposition take place here in real time,
2,500.
just to give you some sort of a feel as to how long the process will take. Okay, so we are now ready to fly the approach. All we need to do to take control of the aircraft is to hold the brakes down for around 3 seconds. We now have control of the jet. You can see we've been placed on the loke just below the glide. We'll arm up the approach and we'll take autopilot 2. We've got loke star. The aircraft just correcting slightly there back onto the loke, slightly out to the right of the localizer currently. We should see glide slope star as well in just a moment's time. But again, everything more or less automatically set up for us, so it's a nice, relatively quick and easy way to fly multiple approaches. As we saw earlier on, looking at the UI, you can select different points as well from which to fly the approach. So we've got glide slope star, loke. In terms of the configuration, we've got the gear down, flaps full, speed brakes are armed. Now we'll just hold the landing checklist for the time being. So inbound for runway 04. And just coming onto the glide slope. Now that we're established, we might as well fly the approach manually, so we'll disconnect the autopilot. And we have Cap 1. As discussed, we will get a printout of our landing performance at the end of the flight, so we'll try and make it a half decent landing here into Geneva. And just approaching 2,000 feet now on the rad out. So for the landing checks, the cabin crew have been advised auto thrust is speed, ECAM memo, landing no blue. The landing check is complete. FSiPanel as well, currently monitoring our tracking of both the loke and the glide slope. That will be included in the landing report. So nicely established here on final, just coming through 3,000 feet. We have a master warning. And coming down to the ECAM there, showing smoke, forward cargo smoke. We'll just get ourselves back on the glide. And that is confirmed, we are showing forward cargo smoke. So for the ECAM actions, cabin fans off. Back up to the overhead, the cabin fans can go off. Agent 1 discharge. So forward cargo smoke. Agent 1, bit of a misclick there on my part. We should see discharge momentarily. When on the ground and before opening the cargo doors, we need to disembark the passengers there ahead of time. So we'll clear smoke. For this status, again when on the ground before opening the cargo doors, passengers disembark. For the in-op systems there, we have left and right cabin fans, forward cargo ventilation.
1,000.
We'll remove the status. As checked, we are stable. Obviously we want to get the aircraft here down on the ground as quickly as possible. We'll make a mayday call as well to air traffic. We'll plan to stop on the runway here. We'll use full reverse for the landing, come onto the brakes pretty quickly as well.
$500.
Let's check to 500. Still 2 reds, 2 whites on the Pappy. Just dipping slightly low, so correcting for that. Back on the Pappy. Slight crosswind out from the left.
100.
And again, we'll try and make it a half decent landing here for the sake of the video.
50. 40. 30. 20. Retard. 5.
There's touchdown. As I say, we'll use full reverse. And we'll start coming into the brakes here as well. We'll aim for the high-speed exit. That'll make it a little bit easier for the fire services. And we'll assume that as we've touched down here, air traffic control has actually told us that they can see smoke coming from the aircraft. So we do have a positive indication there on the cargo smoke warning. So stopping the aircraft onto the brakes. Park brake can go on. We'll make a PA as well to advise the cabin crew. And running through the on-ground emergency evacuation checklist. Parking brake is set, ATC have been notified. Engine masters 1 and 2 can both go off. The cabin crew have been notified. Fire push buttons. We can push for the engines and the APU. For the squibs there, no need to activate the squibs. We know it's a cargo fire. And in terms of the evacuation, we'll make the order. Let the command evac horn on, and we can shut that down here in the cockpit, awaiting emergency services. So safely back down on the ground in Geneva. Obviously a little bit of a canned scenario there. I knew that the cargo smoke warning was coming, but I thought it might be of interest to you. In terms of our landing report then, you can see that FSiPanel gives us a pretty decent amount of feedback in terms of the landing. We've got the aircraft we were flying, as well as the airport and the current conditions at the time. In terms of our touchdown analysis, the landing distance was good. Deviation from the centerline was satisfactory. We were 3 meters out to the right. For the touchdown rate there, we've obviously been stitched up by FSiPanel, showing us a generous positive landing, 292 feet per minute. Bank angle at touchdown 0.7, that was apparently perfect, so we got something right at least. And pitch at touchdown 6.3 degrees up. You can see as well the tracking for both the loc and the glide slope. Slight deviations there on both, obviously though we were trying to handle the ECAM and fly the aircraft at the same time. Anyway, that's a very quick overview of what is arguably the main functionality here of FSiPanel. However, the function of the program that I personally enjoy the most are the training scenarios, so we'll now run through one of those. We're going to be taking an aircraft departing out of Bremen. I won't spoil the scenario too much for you. Again, there will be a surprise failure along the way. It should be good fun, hopefully as well a decent demonstration of the training scenarios within FSiPanel. And lastly as well, hopefully a decent demonstration of some more failure handling in the Fenix Airbus A320. Okay, so we now find ourselves lined up on runway 27 here at Bremen. As you can see, the weather's not looking too flash, particularly up at the departure end of the runway, so to cater for that, we've just gone through to ignition start on the engine start selector, and momentarily as well we'll take the wipers on here ahead of the takeoff. The aircraft is set and ready to go. Most of that configuration has taken place automatically via the FSiPanel utility, which is really nice to see. We'll just work our way though through the before takeoff checks, make sure we've covered off everything here ahead of time. So the flight controls have been checked, the briefing is confirmed. Flap setting, we have config 2 across the board. V-speed and thrust, we have V1 135, VR 140, V2 143. That's checked on the PFD. And we have a flex of 45 degrees. ATC is set, ECAM memo, we have takeoff no blue. Below the line, the cabin crew have been advised the engine mode selector is set to ignition start. And the packs are selected on. That's the before takeoff checklist complete. As I say, we'll take the wipers on here ahead of the takeoff. And we can get the takeoff clearance now from the tower.
Good morning, windmill 711. Wind 270 degrees at 25 gusting 30. Runway 27, cleared for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, runway 27, windmill 711. Okay, so we are clear for the takeoff. The park brake can come off. The wind straight down the runway. We'll stand the throttles up, let the engine stabilise. And take off. So we have Manflex 45, SRS runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust is set. It's 100 knots. B1 rotate. And we do have positive climb. The gear can come up. There's nav on the FMA. Then we'll go autopilot 1. There's AP1. Gear up now, so we'll take the wipers off. And up through 1500 feet, there's lever climb and climb. We'll just wait until we see a positive acceleration before we come back on the thrust levers.
Windmill 711. Contact departure 124.8. Bye-bye.
124.8, windmill 711, thanks. So we have thrust climb, auto thrust. Speed is checked, we'll go flaps 1. And we can switch over to departures 124.8. We'll just hold off on calling them until we've got the aircraft clean. Aviate, navigate, communicate, so we'll focus on the most important tasks at hand first. And just come out through 1 to go. There's S-speed, we'll go flaps 0. And we can call departures. Departures, good morning, windmill 711, passing 3,500 on climb 4,000.
Windmill 711. Radar contact. Continue climb flight level 120.
Climb flight level 120, windmill 711. Then we have thrust climb, climb out blue, flight level 120, accelerating out to 250 knots. Flaps are retracted, so we'll get the lights off. And we can disarm the spoilers. Still coming through a little bit of weather here currently, so we'll leave the ignition on. In terms of the TAT, plus 15 degrees, so no need for the engine anti-ice. There's 5,000 feet, we'll go standard on both altimeters. And we'll just leave the local QNH there on the standby, so we have standard set and cross-checked. The after takeoff checklist, the landing gear is up, flaps are retracted, packs are on. Is the after takeoff checklist complete? Looks like we're now out of the worst of this weather, so we'll take the ignition off. And we'll just leave the cabin crew sat down here until we've cleared our way through the weather. Up through 7,000 feet. Just making a turn out towards the northwest. And of course maintaining 250 knots here. Okay, we do have a master caution, so we'll cancel that. Coming down to the ECAM, we have hydraulic, green reservoir, low level. That is confirmed, so running through the ECAM actions. PTU off. Coming up to the overhead, we have hydraulics, PTU off, green engine 1 pump off. Again, hydraulics, green engine 1 pump is selected off. Green engine 1 pump low pressure, of course expecting to see that now with the pump selected off. And green system low pressure. So we'll clear hydraulics.
Windmill 711. Copied emergency. Hanover ATIS is available on 123.45. Stand by for further instructions.
123.45 for the ATIS, windmill 711. So things do get obviously a little bit busier, single crew. Ordinarily we'd have one person handling the ECAM, one person handling the radios. We'll just tune up the ATIS here in the standby on COM 2, 123.45. There's 1,000 to go on the altitude. In terms of the secondary failures for the wheel, we have loss of green system normal braking. However, we do have anti-skid still available and alternate braking via the yellow system. The auto brake as well unavailable for the landing. There's speed out star just leveling off at flight level 120. We'll clear wheel. And on the flight controls, as you'd expect, losing the green systems, the blue and the yellow still taking the load in terms of the flight controls. And it looks as well as though we've lost spoilers 1 and 5. So clearing flight control. Lastly, for the status, in terms of the landing gear extension, that's going to be a gravity extension, so we'll have to run through the QRH for that later on. We can discuss that more later on in the video. Landing distance procedure apply, again, we'll apply the QRH there later. That will be using the FB for the landing data calculation. Again, we do have alternate braking off the yellow hydraulic system available with anti-skid. Slats and flaps extension is going to be slow, so we'll bear that in mind for the configuration during the approach. And we have Cat 3 single only. In terms of the in-op systems, green hydraulics, spoilers 1 and 5, Cat 3 dual, loss of normal braking, loss of auto brake, no landing gear retraction, no reverse on engine number 1. We've lost the green engine 1 pump, although of course we've turned that off manually, and the yaw damper 1. So we'll remove the status, that is the cam actions complete. So the scenario getting a little bit ahead of us there really, we've opted to divert over towards Hanover. I believe the logic behind that is that the runway at Bremen's fairly short. Hanover's runway 27 right's much longer. That's a better option for us. Ordinarily though, we'd want to get the weather here ahead of making any diversion decision.
Windmill 711, copied your intention to divert to Hanover. Fly heading 090.
Heading 090, windmill 711. Okay, so we're coming to heading, onto heading of 090. Then we have heading 090, we'll tune up the H's at Hanover.
This is Hanover Information Bravo. Runway in use 27 right, ILS approach. Wind 280 degrees at 25 knots. Visibility 2,500 meters. Rain. Overcast 700 feet. Temperature 16, dew point 8, QNH 1009. Transition level 60, NOSIC.
So the weather at Hanover, not particularly great, but certainly well above what we need for the ILS. It's going to be a Cat 1 ILS into Hanover. As I say, the scenario gets a little bit ahead of us here. Ordinarily we'd want to have assessed the situation, worked our way through the ECAM, gotten the weather at Hanover, seen whether or not it's suitable before making that diversion decision. Anyway, the plan here, we're obviously going to turn out towards the east, heading inbound towards Hanover. We'll just wait until we've got a further clearance here and then we can start setting up the MCDU for the diversion. Somehow ahead of time here I managed to figure out which chart we need, so we've already got the Hanover ILS here available for 27 right on the EFB, and again we'll calculate the landing performance as well from the EFB later on. So Hanover out towards the east, the code for Hanover Echo Delta Delta Victor. We should be able to spot that on the nav display. That should come onto the screen in just a moment's time. Anyway, we've obviously got everyone sat down still here at the moment. We'd leave everyone sat down. We can inform the cabin crew as well that we're going to be making a diversion and that they can prepare the cabin for that ahead of time. There's Hanover, Echo Delta Delta Victor, off on a bearing of roughly 110. And just coming onto our heading now of 090. So the aircraft just rolling level. And as I say, we'll just wait here until we get our further clearance, at which point we can set up the box. So whilst we're waiting for further clearance here from air traffic, we can just start briefing the chart.
Windmill 711, contact Bremen radar 131.330.
131.330, windmill 711. Okay, 131. 330. Radar, windmill 711, flight level 120, heading 090.
Windmill 711, identified, descend flight level 100, fly direct Charlie Echo Lima and hold as published, expect ILS 27 right.
Descend flight level 100, direct Charlie Echo Lima, hold as published, expect the ILS 27 right, windmill 711. So we'll start the descent first. There's flight level 100. No need to get down in a rush here, so we'll just go for a VS minus 500 feet per minute. So a VS -500 out blue, flight level 100. 10 degrees there on the TAT at the moment. We'll take the engine anti-ice on, just in anticipation of coming back down through the cloud layer. Temperature should be fine unless we start any sort of deceleration. Next we'll go direct to Charlie Echo Lima. And that looks to be correct, so we'll insert that. And we have nav Charlie Echo Lima. Holding is published, so the hold, it's inbound 257. It's going to be a right hand hold, 1 minute leg, so we can set that. As I say, we can now start setting up the box here for Hanover. So from Charlie Echo Lima, new destination, Echo Delta Delta Victor. And we'll insert. Anticipating the ILS 27 right. It's going to be the Zulu approach. And no star here, but approaching via Charlie Echo Lima. And once again we'll hit insert, enter destination data. We can do that now. So again, just bringing up the HOTAS for Hanover.
This is Hanover Information Bravo. Runway in use 27 right, ILS approach. Wind 280 degrees at 25 knots. Visibility 2,500 meters. Rain. Overcast 700 feet. Temperature 16, dew point 8, QNH 1009. Transition level 60, NOSIC.
Okay, so we've got the approach information there in the MCDU. We'll just put the MDA in as well. MDA is 369 feet. That's on the Barrow. So as you can see, tracking inbound direct towards Charlie Echo Lima. And just coming up on 1 to go for our descent down to flight level 100. We've got about 60 miles to run here towards the hold. Not much more to do here. Ordinarily we could continue to set up for the approach. There's no real point going to the hold unless we have to. But just for the sake of the video today, we'll continue for now in our descent. We'll take up the hold and we can brief and program the approach, carry out the gravity gear extension, and then fly the ILS. Okay, so we're just approaching our top of descent point, about 10 miles to run there, expecting further descent from air traffic shortly. As I say, we'll enter into the hold here, and we'll get the aircraft set up, ready for the approach. Really just for the sake of the video, entering the hold, we could have done most of this en route, as we discussed just a moment ago. In terms of what we've got to get done in the hold, we need to finish setting up the MCDU. We've also got to calculate our landing performance. Again, we'll be doing that via the EFB. And we'll brief up the approach as well via the chart, again done via the EFB. No auto brake available for the landing if you remember from the status page, so we'll discuss that as well during the briefing. And whilst we've got a little bit of time here as well, we'll just have a quick scan through the status page just to remind ourselves. So again, gravity extension on the landing gear, alternate braking, slats and flaps slow, Cat 3 single only. Just coming onto the performance page.
Windmill 711. Descend flight level 70, reduce speed at own convenience.
Okay, descend flight level 70, speed our discretion, windmill 711. Says flight level 70, again no need to come down in a hurry, we're going to be in the hold, so we'll just go with VS -500. And in terms of the speed, we'll go back to manage speed. We'll decelerate initially towards 250 knots, and as we come into the hold we should come back towards our hold speed. So just to save a little bit of time here on the video, we'll start getting everything set up before we come into the hold. Just coming down through 10,000, so we'll take the LS push buttons on, landing lights are selected on, and we'll cycle the seatbelt signs. 10 degrees there on the TAT, we'll get the engine anti-ice on again. So first things first, we'll brief up the approach, then we'll get the box set up. So it's the ILS Zulu, runway 27 right, plate 11-5. For the frequency, it's 108.9, India Hotel November Whiskey. Final approach course is 271. Aerodrome elevation 183 feet, down to an MDA of 369 feet. For the missed approach, it's climbed straight ahead, and after passing 600 feet or 0.8 DME, whichever's later, turning right, max speed of 185 knots, so we'll have to maintain config 1 for the go-around, and again for the go-around we're going to have the gear extended. On turning of 356, climbing up to an altitude of 3,000 feet. Ultimately, climbing up to 4,000 for the missed approach. In terms of the terrain, nil significant there. You can see there's just a little bit of high terrain out towards the southwest of the field, but the MSA, 2,800 feet. Weather, you've already heard the ASUS, much the same as we saw out of Bremen, quite a bit of rain in the area.
Windmill 711, descend 4,000 feet QNH 1009. When ready for the approach, contact Director 119.605. Good day.
Descend altitude 4,000, 119.605. When ready for the approach, Windmill 711. Okay, so we've got 4,000, and we'll clear down to an altitude now, so we'll set the QNH. We have QNH 1009 set and cross-checked. We'll switch over to Director 119.605. And you can see, just coming overhead Charlie Echo Lima. So the weather as we discussed. Visibility down to a couple of kilometres. Cloud base I believe was 700 feet, so good enough for the ILS. We need 550 metres in terms of the visibility. Operationally, no auto brake available. Again, slats and flaps will be slow. It'll be a gravity extension. We'll use idle reverse. Only reverse available on number 2. We'll be stopping on the runway, and we'll try and get the aircraft stopped just at the high speed exit, anticipating being towed off the runway here today. That's going to make the whole operation a little bit easier. So in terms of what we've got in the box, the flight plan has been checked already. It's for the ILS 27 right Zulu at Hanover. On the rad navs, we've got India Hotel November Whiskey 108.9 with a final approach course of 269. Slight discrepancy there with the chart. I think we've got different nav databases. It's a 3-degree slope. In terms of fuel, we've got 4.6 tonnes of fuel on board the aircraft, so plenty of fuel if you need to make a go-around or a further diversion. Performance-wise, again, we've got the data in the box, and the Barrow MDA there, 369. On the progress page as well, we'll just enter Hanover 27 right. So the box is set up. In terms of our weight, we are below the max landing weight, 59.7 tonnes. Max landing weight for the Fenix Airbus is 64.5, so we're below max landing weight. Weather's been checked. Brakes, again, it'll be manual braking. No auto brake option available. Briefing is complete. The approach, again, it's the ILS 27 right. The aids have been checked. So in terms of calculating the landing performance, we'll go to arrival perf on the FB. And Echo Delta Delta Victor, runway 27 right. We'll go with medium poor just to cover off the most conservative case scenario here. We can fetch the METAR data. So 260 at 3. That's actually incorrect. We're looking at 280 at 25, 16 degrees, 1009. I guess there the sim has pulled the data from somewhere else. For some reason there, that's not actually letting me enter the wind. Just try once more. There we go. So 280, 25. Said 16 degrees. And QNH of 1009. Landing weight 59. 0.5. For the auto brake, again, no auto brake available, so max manual braking. We'll go with no reversers. It's going to be manual landing, flaps full, auto thrust on. And in terms of the failure scenario here, hydraulics, green system low pressure. So you can see here we've got a landing distance available, 2,900 meters. And the factor landing distance actually slightly above that, 3012. We've been pretty conservative there though. We can actually bump things up all the way through to good if we really need to in terms of the landing performance. And you can see there we've got about 2,150 meters in terms of the factor landing distance. So a fair bit of margin available. So in terms of the landing performance calculation, we're all good. Just to expedite things slightly here, we'll go immediate exit on the hold. We'll activate the approach phase. And we'll call director now, tell him we're ready for the approach. Director, windmill 711, ready for the approach.
Windmill 711, roger. Clear the ILS 27 right.
Clear for the ILS, runway 27 right, windmill 711. Okay, so we are clear for the ILS, just coming down through 7,000 feet. So we're a little bit high currently, we'll go into an open descent. And we'll get things slowed up here as we come through Echo Echo Lima, just to help the aircraft slightly here. It's a little bit of a tricky turn otherwise. We'll go direct to Charlie Echo Lima once again. So we have nav, Charlie Echo Lima. And we'll take flaps 1. Back into the rain, we'll take the ignition on once again. And taking the flaps there, the status page. Just checking we don't have any changes. So landing gear gravity extension apply, we'll do that in just a moment's time. Landing distance procedure has been applied. And the rest no changes. So bringing out the QRH, we'll run through the landing gear gravity extension. Just coming down through 6,000 feet. We do have open descent there. Out blue 4,000 on the FMA. So landing gear gravity extension, there's a caution there. Do not apply this procedure if at least one green triangle is displayed on each landing gear wheel SD page. Not relevant to us here. Gravity gear extension hand crank, pull and turn. So coming down to the back of the pedestal, turn that through 3 rotations. It's 1, 2, and 3. You can see there the gear is extending. Just went until we got 3 greens. We've got India Hotel November Whiskey identified. Looks like the ILS is correct sensing. We'll just wait until we approach to arm it up. Okay, so we do have 3 greens on the gear indication. We'll take the gear lever down. Gear indications are checked. And master caution there, we're expecting to see that. Landing gear doors not closed, max speed 250 knots. Fuel consumption increased and the FMS predictions unreliable. So we'll clear landing gear. In terms of the status, max speed 250 knots, fuel consumption increased. FMS predictions unreliable. Landing gear doors, those are the only changes. We'll remove the status. Ecom actions complete. We'll take flaps 2. Start bringing the speed back towards 160 knots just to help here with the turn. Plus 12 degrees on the OT, so the engine anti-ice can come off. And again, we've got the ignition on. We'll leave the wipers off for now. Just leveling off at 4,000. We've got a restriction of 4,000. We can descend down to 3 thereafter. But in this case, we can arm up the approach. So we've got glide slope Loke Blue, Cat 3 single we're expecting to see, as per the ECAM, autopilot 1 and 2. So as we come around the corner here, we should capture the Loke. Hopefully as well we'll capture the glide slope. If not, again, we can descend down to 3,000 feet. In the meantime, we can run through the approach checklist. So for the approach checks, the briefing is confirmed, ECAM status has been checked. Seatbelts are on, barrier ref, we have QNH 1009 set. There's glide slope star, Loke star, and we've got 4000 set for the missed approach.
Windmill 711, contact tower 120.180. Safe landing.
120.180, windmill 711, thanks. So 120.18. We'll just finish off the checklist and then we'll call the tower. So MDA, we have a baro of 369 set, and the engine mode selector is set through to ignition start. That's the approach checklist complete. Maintaining 160 knots for now. Still about 10 miles here to run towards the runway. Gear's already down. Tower windmill 711, ILS 27 right.
Windmill 711, cleared to land 27 right, wind 280 degrees at 25 knots. Rescue services at the runway. They will approach you once parking brake is set.
Okay, clear to land runway 27 right. We will be stopping on the runway, windmill 711. So we have glide slope Loke, just coming down through 3,000 feet, showing 9 miles to run. Still very much in all of this nasty weather at the moment. So stopping on the runway, again the plan is to try and stop by the high speed exit, just to make the tow off the runway that little bit easier. And once we're on the runway here, anticipating that we'll have the emergency services come out to meet us. Just coming down through the cloud, you can just about see we are visual with the ground, but we're going to be straight back into the weather here. 15 degrees now on the TAT. We'll keep 160 knots until around 6 miles in this particular case, again with the slats and flaps extension being a little bit slow. Let's check 2,500. Just coming through 8 miles. The altitude checks against the distance. At the moment we've still got 47 knots off the nose in terms of the wind there. And 25 is what we're expecting on the ground, so we've got about another 20 knots of wind we're going to lose here through the last 2,000 feet of the descent. So down through 7 miles, we'll take flaps 3. And we'll take the wipers on as well. Showing 5 miles to run, we'll go managed speed. And we'll take config full. In terms of the landing checklist, the camera crew have been advised. Just the spoilers to come there, we should have got those with the gear. And same for the lights. So landing checklist, camera crew have been advised. Auto thrust is speed, ecam memo. We have landing no blue, that's the landing checklist complete. Still not visual with the runway just yet. Back at managed speed though, doing 158 knots or thereabouts. Quite a high speed there, that's due to the pretty strong headwind component here versus the lesser headwind component on the ground. The aircraft carrying a little bit more energy in anticipation of the loss of that headwind. Anyway, fully configured, approaching 1,000 feet. About 5 miles to run towards the runway. And still not visual yet with the lead-in lights. Again, we are clear for the landing. We'll keep the autopilot in until we are visual with the runway. Actually, that headwind component's increased slightly there, so we're going to get a pretty drastic drop off in the wind.
1,000.
That's checked. We are stable. So keeping a really good eye out now for those lead-in lights. Again, the minima is 369 feet. It's going to be pretty touch and go here as to whether or not we're visual with the runway. I don't believe in the scenario the intention is for a go around, but if we're not visual, we'll carry one out. Certainly though, it's making for a very interesting scenario thus far. Okay, just visual with the lights. So disconnecting the autopilot.
200. Minimum.
Continue. All that wind just falling off at the last minute there, so getting a little bit low on the PAPI, we'll correct for that. Not sure why we have the auto land lights, not relevant in this particular case.
20, retard.
And just getting a little bit caught out in the flare there as we arrest our descent rate, so slightly long. Let's touch down. So coming up on the reverses. You can see the high speed exit off there on our left. And we'll just start braking manually. Down through 70 knots, so cancelling the reverses. And we'll just let the aircraft roll through again, just towards the high speed exit. And coming onto the brakes. So part brake can go on. And we'll call the ground services, have them come up, meet the aircraft. They can come over and make sure everything's okay. And sure enough, we have the emergency services here to meet us towards the end of our scenario. So there you go, ladies and gents. I do hope you enjoyed our look at FSiPanel. Hopefully the video here has given you a decent idea of what the product has to offer. Certainly the program is a great tool if you want to establish more realistic training scenarios within the sim. And even if you are just looking to hone your landing skills on a specific aircraft, again the tool offers up a very expeditious way of setting up multiple approaches. FSiPanel allowing the user to save quite a bit of time in terms of positioning and setup of the aircraft. Anyway, just to wrap up the video, we'll just cover off a few more specifics regarding the product. Before purchasing the add-on, I would highly recommend taking a thorough look through the FSiPanel website. There are two versions of the product currently available for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The standard edition retailing at $29.95 USD and the advanced edition retailing at $49.95 USD. It is the advanced edition that we looked at here today, and the advanced edition does offer up more functionality than the standard edition of the add-on. In short, the advanced edition offers up the training scenarios that we looked at in the second half of the video, as well as the advanced failures panel, whereas the standard edition comes with a basic failures panel. But once again, it is worth having a good look through the FSiPanel website ahead of purchase and familiarising yourself with each version of the product, making sure that you pick the version which best suits your needs. The website also gives a detailed list of the aircraft currently supported by the product. I won't run through every airframe here as it is a fairly significant list detailing some 37 aircraft. Broadly speaking though, FSiPanel currently supports all Asobo stock aircraft, the PMDG 737, Fenix Airbus A320, the Leonardo Mad Dog, the Flight Sim Studios E175. There is also support for the Aerosoft CRJ, the Just Flight BAE 146, as well as the Inibuilds A310 and the Headwind A330-900. Once again though, it is worth mentioning that that support primarily extends to the positioning scenarios, so the landing scenarios that we looked at during the first half of the video. If you are looking to carry out any failure scenarios or training scenarios, then those are primarily based around the PMDG 737, the Leonardo Mad Dog, and the Fenix Airbus A320. So all in all, FSiPanel is obviously a fairly specific tool for a fairly specific type of simmer. But once again, I do genuinely feel that the program does what it sets out to do very effectively. If you are looking to train more realistically and also more expeditiously within the sim, then the aircraft positioning tool and the failures panel certainly very useful.
500.
My personal favourite aspect of the product, definitely the training scenarios. Ostensibly, in the particular scenario that we ran, the hydraulics failure should have been a surprise. Some of the training scenarios do have failures thrown in, So I think they're a great way of having some interesting flights in the sim, pushing yourself in terms of scenarios that you might not otherwise encounter. I'm really hoping that we'll continue to see this aspect of the product fleshed out. Again, I think it's one of FSiPanel's major strengths. The training scenarios, as I understand it, are actually a fairly recent addition to the program, at least within Microsoft Flight Simulator. And on that note, I've had FSiPanel installed for around 2 months now. During that time, I have seen multiple updates to the product, which is great to see. Anyway, ladies and gents, once again, I do hope you enjoyed the video and found it of interest. If you did, then please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you to FSiPanel for letting us take a look at the product, and as always, a huge thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. I do hope that all of you are having a great day, wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.